Yep, thanks.
He's going to tell us where he's sitting.
Oh, wow, we're signed.
Yes, there's a sign.
Okay, great. Jeremy, nice. Hi, I'm Sherry R. Nice to meet you.
So I think one good reason why Rich and any other retailer would want to pump up their mobile program is some of the latest research that we've been seeing about how people are using smartphones in the aisle and both the promise and the peril that it poses for retailers. The latest research that I've seen about smartphone behavior in the aisles is showing that those who own smartphones are using them to find better deals on items elsewhere. In fact, they index higher for buying online what they see in store than any other group. So we're starting to see really harder evidence of the fact that people are being poached in aisle 13 from retailers, that there really is what I've been calling lately in a lot of my columns, the skirmish in aisle 13 over who gets that customer, who's going to be first there with the best service, to talk to that customer who knows how to use their cell phone and knows how to use it to find better deals elsewhere. When you're standing outside of a home that's for sale, where are you going to go? Which brand do you go to? Do you go to the realtor who's got their sign up there, or do you go to Zillow? That will show you other houses in the area that are also for sale. And how does that change the way a Patterson Schwartz or a Remax has to go about what they do? At our last OMMA, at our last Mobile Insider Summit, we heard Century 21 tell us that in fact that's exactly what happened to them. They expanded their profile of what they offered on their mobile phone, but because they saw that what people really wanted was not just the homes that Century 21 had for sale, but the homes everybody else had for sale. And that was something that third parties were already providing. So trying to find out how to use mobile to both make good on the promise of smartphones in the aisle, but also be the first one there with consumers to serve them at that moment of need is going to become, I think, one of the great issues of the next year, the ways in which all retailers have to position themselves in that skirmish. To take up the question of how mobile is augmenting the reality of shopping for all of us now, and how to somehow bring back that straying consumer or be the first to serve them, I've asked Cory Treffiletti to take the lead. He's one of our most popular columnists at MediaPost. He's the regular writer of Online Spin. He's also the president and managing partner at Catalyst S&F here in the city, and of course a veteran of, I think all of you know Cory. He's a veteran from Carafe Fusion. He's worked with some of the leading brands in crafting their digital strategies, everybody from BMW to Warner Brothers. Our old friend, Cory Treffiletti.
Good morning. So we are scheduled to sit here and talk with you and keep you away from your food. That's a really great position to be in. But we're still excited to do it. So thank you all for sticking by us and coming and sit and listen to what we're going to talk about. So as Steve talks about the idea of the cell phone and mobile becoming a surrogate salesperson and really helping the consumer identify when and where and how they're going to make their purchases, what they're going to pay for their purchases, and so on and so forth. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a topic that from a personal perspective and a consumer perspective, I like to look at it first and see how I use these tools and services on a daily basis, and then I like to go read about what everybody else is doing, and then I like to go talk to smart people like the panelists that we have here to hear how their companies are addressing that same situation. So I want to introduce our panel, and then I want to just dive right into the topic. So first off, just running down the line, we have Grace Dolan, who's the head of mobile search, technology, and consumer electronics for Google. Is that all of them?
Yep.
Okay, good. Then we have Sherry R. Khan, who's the CEO for Ubermind. Good morning. And then you already met Rich Lesperance, who is up here, and Rich's title is Director of Digital Marketing and Emerging Media from Walgreens. And then we have Philip Pfeiffer, who is the leader of the account management team for the West Coast for UsableNet. And then all the way down there, we have Jeremy Waxman, who's the Senior Director of Marketing and Mobile Strategy for Zillow. Okay? So the first question that we wanted to ask, and it was funny when we did our prep call the other day and we started to talk about how we were going to address this topic, I immediately started going down the idea of what Steve was saying, which is aisle 13. And when you're in store, what are you doing? What mobile applications are you using? And how are you interacting with your phone to supplement your experience? But we quickly got on the idea that retail doesn't just mean in store. It can be around any experience around commerce. It can be around any sort of shopping-enabled environment and how that's translated to mobile. And I just wanted to ask the question right off the bat is, How are you seeing brands drive adoption of these mobile platforms as a tool to interact with shoppers? So just running down the topic. Anybody want to start?
I'll take that. I mean, I actually think that consumers are driving the adoption and not so much brands. I think it is a post-PC world. I think a good example is PacSun, which has a mobile optimized site, an iPhone app, maybe even integrated the register with their .com, so you can pull from their online inventory in the store. They have a tablet app actually also in their stores. So I think optimizing for all of these experiences across platform is really important, because there's no difference really between your content and the service. And I think that that's an expectation that consumers have. And it's a high bar, I think, that's been set.
I can add to that. I don't know how many of you have heard of Tesco. Tesco is a European groceries chain who was trying to set up shop in Korea. And what Tesco did, which was really unique, is that they wanted to bring the shopping experience to their customers. People in Korea are very busy. They don't have time to go to the grocery store. It's not a fun experience for them. So they wallpapered the bus inside of a metro station so that it looked exactly like the shelves of their grocery store. Items had barcodes next to them, and you could scan the item, have it added to your mobile cart, and delivered to your home. So that's just a really unique experience about using the mobile experience to bring your store to your customers.
Some of the brands we're working with, Target, REI, they're looking at mobile in a very holistic sort of manner. They think of mobile as sort of a logical extension of their business. So there's a place for mobile inside the store, equipping team members with devices that they can use as point of sale or checkout. And then on the consumer side, it's about providing utility and reach, which typically translates to an iPhone app, an Android app, a mobile optimized website, and sometimes an iPad application.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our category, as we talked about earlier, it's using the technology that consumers are driving that Phil talked about in a way they want to. So for real estate, it's using GPS. So it's not about the barcode, it's about where are you standing, right? And it's using the curve you're on and understanding what are the Century 21 homes for sale, what are the other homes for sale, what are the homes that are not for sale. And so it's consumers are seeking that information in their aisle and helping them answer those questions with their smartphone.
It's safe to say that we're seeing far more adoption of consumers using these platforms, these apps, and using their phones for shopping over the last, say, 2 years. Who's driving it? Do you think it's the consumers are driving it? Do you think that the brands and the retailers are driving it? Or do you think do you think it's Apple? And do you think it's Android? And do you think it's Google that's really driving the adoption of these platforms?
I think the platform providers are clearly driving adoption, so that's Apple and Google, specifically by adding new features like Siri, for example, which is what Apple just added. And then consumers are using those devices in interesting manners and driving purchasing behavior. And then the brands, a lot of the brands we're working with tends to be somewhat reactive in that consumers are driving purchasing behavior, and then the brands are trying to catch up with how consumers are using these devices and then building experiences that enhance that purchasing behavior.
I was actually going to say I think consumers are definitely leading the way. From being a part of Google, what we find is that we don't want to just build a product for the sake of building a product, to see if it works. We want to do our homework and understand, what are consumers asking for, and then build our products to answer those questions. So, it's really about solving problems. And I think when we really figure out what the problem is we're trying to solve, we're going to be a hell of a lot more successful than if we, try to put an app out there and see if anyone grabs onto it. Mm-hmm. So I think consumers are driving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the ultimate meritocracy, right? Where in the, you're looking at your ranking in the App Store or in the marketplace and you're trying to get your rating up there, because you know if you can get great reviews, consumers love it, your downloads will go up exponentially just from being ranked higher, and that's the way the game's played. And I think we have to build things that people love, or will quickly be dismissed and put to the bottom of the rank.
Well, let me ask you a question specifically, and I'm going to ask it about Walgreens, and then we can tailor it out. But do you feel that Walgreens or retailers in general are really innovating the development of these platforms, or is it the third-party companies? Like you have Shopkick, and for a while you had Sticky Bits, and you had a lot of these other companies that were doing a lot of great innovation, and consumers were finding these things in the iTunes store, and they were putting it on their phones and playing with it. And then it seems like the retailers go and try to play catch-up and work with those folks. Is it okay that the third-party folks are developing a lot of this and blazing the path in advance of the retailers, or do you think the retailers have to sort of hop, skip over and start to really take the lead?
Well, no one asked my permission, but I say, no, of course it's okay. I think it's great. I think it's, I think that all companies need help and ideas, and that's the best way to innovate. But at the end of the day, you can cram a lot of stuff into your app or your mobile experience, but if it isn't true to your brand and your core strategy, then it's going to be this kind of interesting kind of sidebar. It won't last. It won't stand the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Let me ask you a question. If a brand comes to you and says, I want to get involved in mobile, what are the first couple questions you're going to ask them to determine whether it's a good place for them to be?
Typically, we'll ask them, we'll try to get a good understanding of what their business model is. How can mobile fit into their sort of larger business model and have a positive impact on their ROI? And then simultaneously, it's also related to sort of how can they provide engagement with the brand by providing utility, by utilizing some of the unique capabilities of the new generation of smartphone devices that are out there.
Anybody else want to, how would you tackle a customer coming to you and saying, we want to get into mobile, what should we do?
Sure. So we would ask what their goals are at the highest level, and then how does digital and mobile fit into those goals. So for example, FedEx, we support in 200 countries and 21 foreign languages. And the way we do that, because they're FedEx, we use the mobile web. So they have a mobile optimized site. So depending on your strategy, you're going to have a different way to execute. So some clients, mobile web makes a lot of sense. For others, native applications make sense. I think you're going to see a lot more tablet optimization and tablet apps as well. So, but I think it starts with the goal. It's certainly a different strategy across retail, travel, healthcare, but I think it starts with what is the brand trying to achieve, what does the brand bring to the table, and then you build out a strategy from there.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, for what you guys are doing with Zillow, because you're not really in the retail environment, but you are helping people to make decisions around very, very highly considered purchases. How do you address what's online versus what's on mobile? How do you look at those two interfaces, and how do you identify which services need to be offered in one versus the other?
I mean, we listen to the consumer and to what the shopper is using on our platform and what they ask for. I think it was said earlier today, the smaller screen is actually a very freeing thing because it forces you to make hard choices about what's the most important data to present, right? We don't present 100% of Zillow on an iPhone. We present the things we think the shoppers are asking for the most. But it also lets us innovate. It lets us use GPS. It lets us use your location. It lets us use the fact that it's a weekend and that there's open houses in the area where you might not do that when you're at work checking it. So I think it's a balance of what we know the technology can provide, to your point on sort of innovating on the platform, and then also what consumers are asking for or need first.
So I want to do a pivot in the world of startup. Everybody likes to pivot these days. The topic that we're supposed to be hitting today is this listening tour, right? And you're supposed to be learning from the customer how the consumer wants to use the platforms and engage with brands. That's kind of a load of crap. Let's just be honest about it. If you think about what Steve Jobs always said, Steve Jobs was pointing out that it wasn't his job to listen to what the consumers want. It was his job to tell the consumers what they need. How much of your innovations really are your technologists and your engineers identifying the things that you think the consumers are going to need and then trying to train them habitually to use these things? Because that's really what I see is happening. Like a brand like Shopkick, or once again like a Sticky Bits or Whirl, which was a great platform when it was up and running, but then it got closed down. You know, those platforms, a consumer didn't need them. But they started getting pretty quick adoption, and people started to play with them and interact with them, and then brands started to take an interest. that wasn't really of an example with someone looking at a case example of where a consumer really was dying for. They created a topic and then they went and they tried to habitually make consumers use it. Is that something that works?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you know, we didn't have customers saying, please let me scan a pill bottle. You know, I mean,
probably don't.
But they did say, please make it faster. You know, make it as fast as possible. So it does go back to the unmet needs and guessing at what, you know, the right, hopefully intelligently, at what you think the right solutions are. And you gotta roll the dice, and you gotta try some things and be willing to fail.
But I would argue that they are solving a problem, right? That consumers were facing, not knowing where to get the best deal, right? If you're, you know, in a store and you don't know, should I buy this item or this item? The phone and these different shopping apps are really solving that problem for me. So I can understand what, you know, my peer set are saying about each product and where I might be able, you know, why I might want to choose one over the other.
I think it's really probably a combination of both. As agencies, it's our responsibility to drive innovation and build out good experiences. And then also, I think it's very important on top of that to listen to user feedback and try to incorporate it as much of the feedback as possible into the roadmap going forward. One of the unique things about the mobile space as it is today is it's evolving very, very quickly. So getting something out there, failing earlier, failing sooner, evolving, iterating is all pretty important to having a successful mobile strategy.
I mean, I think, and take our category as not even a brick and mortar retail as another example, you know, to Grace's point, it's solving an unmet need, whether we can articulate it or someone else can. No one knew that they could stand in front of a house where the flyers were gone and figure out what the house was worth, what the listing price was, what the comps were in the area. And then also no one knew to even ask, oh my gosh, I can contact someone right now to see it while I'm standing here. I mean, those were things that Apple and Google enabled for us that was just transformative in how we took our data to market. But, you know, we didn't articulate those needs before the technology was there.
Right. It's fair to say probably that what mobile does is it disrupts all these experiences. It's disrupting the shopping experience. It's disrupting the real estate buying experience. Is it also possible to say that it's disrupting the retail business? I mean, you can follow a path of thought that says these third-party apps are actually hurting retail store sales because a person may go and I know a couple people who do this, they'll go into Best Buy, they'll start scanning items with the Amazon app, and then they'll go to Amazon and figure out how to buy it cheaper. That hurts Best Buy's bottom line because they didn't sell the product, but they were there as a display case for products. So how do brands, and how does a company like, I'll pose it to you, how does a company like Google, who's there to help organize the world's information, how do you make sure that you're serving both constituencies? You're serving the customers, but you're also serving those larger companies and brands that you partner with all over the place.
So first of all, what I think about the Best Buy scenario, the example that you laid out, is that if Best Buy does a good job of providing the tools to the consumer, maybe it's through an app, maybe it's through, you know, something in their store, you know, or barcodes, that if I'm a consumer and I can get all the information I want right here in Best Buy, maybe Amazon has a better price, maybe Best Buy has a better return policy. You know what I mean? So I think you have to provide the user the best information that you can. Don't be scared if your price is higher. Show the value that you can provide. And you know, for Best Buy, I think that they will continue to see success.
What about everybody else? Do you think
Yeah,
it's
I
going to
mean,
disrupt
no, I
it?
agree. It's, you know, you got to face the reality that some people will be doing that in your stores, and it's more accountability. I mean, there's nothing new about being, you know, accountable as a business. People vote with their dollars. This makes it. I think it is a bit of an upheaval in retail. For Walgreens, though, what's I guess fortunate is that, you know, I think not to be naive that people wouldn't be scanning products in our stores, and that's great. But I think, you know, we need to be remembering what it is that we're in business to do, right? And are we in business to you know, be the cheapest price on every single product? You know, we're not a pure play online site. We're within about 3 miles of 70% of U.S. households, you know, and that costs a lot of money to do that really well. And so, we are going to continue to be good at what we do. I think that the question is, how do we use mobile to take what we're really great at and make it even better? And that's not just with mobile, but it's with digital. Like, for example, pharmacy chat online. Like, that's a simple example where, people would have said, well, how can you possibly make something better than being able to go to Walgreens and talk to my pharmacist? Well, what if it's 4 a.m. and you want to chat then? And they go, oh yeah, good point. So
I want to FaceTime them at 4 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's where the world's going, is provide more choice, more control, more convenience.
Yeah, I agree with Rich. I think certainly mobile is disruptive, but there's also a lot of opportunities. So I think, especially with the advent of local, Amazon was disruptive as well. 2-day shipping. So I think a lot of the brick and mortar retail stores that are figuring out how to bridge the mobile physical gap are going to be the ones that succeed. So we're doing a lot of find in store and pick up same day with some of our automotive clients like O'Reilly and Advanced Auto Parts. So I think you're going to see more innovation and more sophistication there.
Just adding to what Phil said there as well. I think it's important for brands, especially retailers, to embrace this purchasing behavior. And one of the sort of interesting side effects of doing so is if you provide your customers with tools that they can use, you can learn a lot from what they're doing in the store, and that intelligence can drive a lot of interesting real-time business decisions. So for a retailer, that may mean spot sales based on a product being very popular, or repopulating the end cap based on the fact that 50% of the population is focused on a particular product on that specific day. So lots of interesting opportunities around the data that can be collected through these apps or tools, and then the ability to leverage that data in interesting ways.
For all of you, because you're all coming at it from a different perspective, and I want to start in the very, very end. How far out are you planning the mobile strategy? Because it's really difficult to plan 18 months out for mobile strategy, knowing how quickly and the rapidity of changes. So from each of your perspectives, how far out are you planning the mobile strategy and how you're going to interact with your consumers?
Yeah, I'll just cop out and say we do both. But we do. We have a set of initiatives and projects and bets we're making on the next 6 months, right? The next couple quarters, and those are more tactical and aligned to kind of business in front of us. And then we have a set of bets we want to make on the next 12 to 18 months they're larger around platform shifts and bets on where the consumers are going. And we've applied development resources and marketing resources to both of those, right? And we know that some of them we expect to see results now, and some of them, well, we'll see. But you have to look beyond 3 or 6 months, but you can't only look that far. You have to. I think it goes back to what you're saying. You have to use the data that we're getting from our users today. We have to see how they're using our iPhone app different from our Android app, and make feature and benefit decisions now. And then we have to think about, Android's growing at this rate on these types of platforms. What should we do about that?
Well, I think. So we work with 20% of the Fortune 1000, so we have very small companies and very large companies, and everybody is different. But I think that certainly an 18-month roadmap makes a lot of sense, and I think that as you plan, you've got to think about both scale and agility. So you've got to think about meeting all of the platform requirements that there are today, as well as positioning yourself flexible enough so that you can meet those unforeseen ones that arise in the future. So I think I do think mobile is a moving target. It requires constant evolution and I think a very disciplined approach.
Well, hopefully, we'd say our strategy doesn't change significantly, unless it was wrong, then it should change. And our core themes don't change, but other than that, it's entirely fluid because it's a function of what actually resonates with customers, which you don't really know until you get out there with something, and what's possible with technology, and what is welcomed by folks in the company, right, in terms of to push it through and adopt it, and it's such a big place. There's so many different stakeholders, so it's very fluid.
I think there's some assumptions that you can make as well. The devices, the connectivity is going to get faster, the devices are going to have more processing capabilities, they're going to have more sensors. So what we try to educate our clients on is here's the market as it stands today, and this is what you need to do to take advantage of it. But you need to always be thinking about some of these things which are going to be happening over the next 6 to 12 months, some of which are more predictable than others, and being agile and being ready to the best of their ability to take advantage of those.
Yeah, sorry to jump back in for one thing, because I think it's a good point. I mean, I think you do look at the trends and all the charts that, go up and to the right about adoption, but, you have to marry that with your user behavior, because the same people who are going to be downloading our app a year or two from now with a smartphone have a different behavior and usage of that phone. They won't go to the App Store as much. They'll be more of a mass market consumer. And so you have to bet on the platforms and bet on the landscape that way, but you have to listen to your users and think about people who might not be as engaged with your brand, who might not be as app savvy, who might have a different use case. They might discover scan to refill a little differently as it proliferates.
And from a Google perspective, I would answer this in two ways. One is from a product perspective. So for the product team at Google, we prioritize what products we're going to launch on a quarterly basis. So we really do think about what are the highest impact products we can bring to market that marketers are going to be able to use now. And then from a sales position, what I'm recommending to my customers is that they need to think about what their customers are doing. So it's about being there when your customers look for you, and it's being there across all 4 screens. So whether someone's sitting on their couch watching the television and they pull out their tablet, we know that there's a lot of interactivity between the tablet and television. So they need to just be there, have an ad present if someone does a search. And so it's the same idea on the mobile phone, right? And being there on a mobile phone is very different than being there on a laptop, where there's only 2 ads, showing at the screen. So that's very important. And then the second thing is just be relevant. So if your customer's looking, here's an example. I did a search. I was playing tennis this week and found my last pair of athletic socks had a hole in them. So I did a search for athletic socks on my mobile phone, and I found an ad for Under Armour. I don't think they're here. And when I clicked on the ad, it sent me to a mobile optimized site, which was great, but the experience had 5 different links. Nowhere on that page did it say athletic socks. So for me, from a customer perspective, I've already given this information, and it's not, I'm not getting the information back that I was looking for. So it's a poor experience. So when I talk to my customers about how to build now, it's really thinking about the end-to-end experience for the consumer and giving them what they're looking for. So being there, being relevant, and solving problems.
But so that brings up a good point. Are we there yet? I mean, let's just do a show of hands, okay? How many people here would anticipate buying athletic socks off their mobile phone? I guess the question I'm asking is that, do we really think that the consumers are quite yet ready to buy everything off their phone? And that was a question that I was going to get to anyways, which is, how much of the data are you looking at? What's the sample size of that data right now? It can't possibly be large enough to make large-scale sweeping business decisions.
And I'll just jump in really quickly, and then I'll let the other panelists speak. But I would argue that it's sort of this chicken before the egg. And as a consumer, if I try to find information on my mobile phone, it might be the first time I did it, right? But if I find a good experience, I'll do it again. If I go and I try to find, for example, Walgreens, right? I might have wanted to refill a prescription 2 years ago, tried it, and it didn't work. And now you can do it. So I think that the athletic socks could easily have been a prescription.
Well, you also bring up something else, too, about what's the planning process as far as mobile phone and tablet and then the online experience? How well tied together do all of these different platforms need to be right now?
Well, I think, I'll take the first question. I think mobile has arrived. From the consumer's perspective, it's as much as 5 or 10% of digital. I would rather look for a hotel on Expedia's mobile site or mobile app than I would on their website, which has got a lot of various initiatives and things going on. So I like the directed experience. I think Jeremy mentioned that earlier, and I think if you do it right, the opportunity is that it's a much more engaging and effective user experience. Going to Grace's point, she calls it relevancy, we call it usability, and I think optimizing, which means making decisions about what functionality to extend to mobile or tablet, for that matter, and exactly how to do that. And I think that's key.
Yeah, I'll jump in as like you said earlier, real estate is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make, and we're absolutely there in terms of consumer adoption of technology to help make that decision, right? We see almost 28 homes viewed on our mobile apps every second, and I mean that's just a staggering number of people who want information, both during the day when they're at work or on weekends when they're looking. I mean, at this point, 20% of our usage is from mobile, and on the weekends it's like 30% of our usage overall. And so, consumers are driving the adoption. They want the information we have to help make that decision. So while they might not be signing the documents on their iPhone yet, although I think we talked about tax prep earlier, and that is starting to happen, this has become a big wedge in the decision and the purchase process, and people are using it to make that decision faster.
Cory, to answer your second question about mobile and tablets and desktop and how these all work together, Google recently released some data showing usage patterns by day. And so I think it was pretty similar to what Rich showed earlier, where he saw really mobile spiking in the evenings. We also see mobile spiking during the lunch hour. And then on tablets, we see the huge spike. I guess the majority of tablet usage is from 6 to 10 p.m. And then also on the weekends. So we learn from this, and then we also learn from the types of keywords we see within search. Search is a great proxy for what people are looking for. So we see people searching more and more on mobile devices. We've talked about this a lot for local, and then on tablet devices for shopping. So I think eBay released a statement that people spend 50% more on a tablet than they do on a desktop computer.
That's also a side effect of, if you look at sort of the usage model for the different devices, iPhone or mobile device, Android device, very personal device in your pocket, generally tends to be a very quick use sort of experience. A tablet device, much more at home, on the couch, in front of the TV, more of an extended use sort of experience. So it's important for brands to understand the different usage models and build experiences on these devices which are reflective of these. And adding to that, I think it's critical that it be an integrated experience. One of the mistakes that we see being made a lot out there right now is you have a single experience which is adapted to different screen sizes, and we don't think that's where the answer is.
The other thing I'd add, I think Grace is right. It really comes down to the experience, and I think we all have a long way to go. And I think that to some degree, I think in the early years of mobile, we've kind of gotten away with it because people have it in their pocket all the time. They're willing to do a lot more and put up with more, which isn't a good thing, but than they would ever on a desktop. And so we need to change that, and we need to get better at it. But we have our weekly ad, our Sunday weekly ad. We have it on mobile. You can click and check it out yourself. It's that big, and it was designed to be mailed to you and be this big. Mm-hmm. And yet people go there. It's hugely popular because they've got downtime, for whatever reason. But it's an opportunity for us to make it better.
Another question I want to hit on, if we go down the assumption that obviously this portion of the business is going to continue to grow, consumers are going to do more and more on their mobile phones or on the tablets and whatever mobile devices that they have. Do you think that A, the retailers and the brands, and B, the third-party companies, are going to be doing a good enough job of using the CRM data that's available and applying that to their other applications? So for example, we're going to pick on Walgreens because you're here. When a customer is buying a lot of their products or renewing their prescriptions and such through their mobile, does your back-end CRM database then identify that customer is a heavy mobile customer and then try to push ads into that mobile environment as well as back to the desktop and through email? And on a third-party business of that, is it possible that a company like a Shopkick could then become a huge data set for other retailers and helping people understand the buying habits of consumers?
Well, it's a multi-part question, right? So I think that first of all, looking at the shopping data, is immensely beneficial and helpful to understand the people who are using. Looking at the ways they engage with us is extremely helpful. To start building a profile of the customer so we can come out with the next refill by scan or the next refill by text or whatever it is that they want. But there is a very high wall between advertising, targeted advertising, and the pharmacy business. So since I don't want to be summarily dismissed, we don't have the ability to sort of target, and we would never do that based on any prescription information. So we have this thing called HIPAA we have to respect. But if you don't even look at prescriptions, though, you look at our retail merchandise and in that space as well. It's another area where we have to be very careful. And I think I'm one of just probably many retailers very cautious about doing too much with targeting. So there's always this kind of line you try to manage between mining the data to get better at serving your customers and starting to use that to say, I know this about you, which can be scary. And so we want to make sure we respect that line.
What about a company like Zillow? I mean, and you don't have to obviously tell us what your future business plans are here, unless you want to.
No,
do you foresee a date in the future where the data that you have is very, very applicable to affluent customers, as to where they're moving to, the kinds of products and services that are going to be very, very interesting to them? Can you use that data and then go either sell that data or partner with other companies to make use of that data so that you can expand your presence beyond just the mobile space and the online space, but completely into the offline space?
Sure. I mean, I can say up front, Zillow is a company, we don't sell our data. It's, we're in a very, like you guys actually, we're in a very personal category, and it's very personal decisions, so we take a privacy-first approach. But I think there is an opportunity in the industry to marry mobile into the CRM system, and I can just speak to it that way and say that I think we're looking for ways to leverage mobile and our site traffic and behavior better all the time. I think every company is. And that's where consumers aren't driving the adoption, and technologies and startups might help drive ways to marry that data together. And actually, and Google, I think, and Apple will help play a role in that. So I think there's clearly an opportunity there. I mean, everyone talks about it being mobile, social, and local, and getting all that integrated will be great for understanding your customer. And we're definitely not there yet.
Anybody else care to comment on it?
I think customer loyalty programs with respect to sort of embedded within mobile applications is something we're seeing more and more of right now. As an example, the REI application, you enter in your member number and it can show your purchasing history and how many points you've accumulated. That's actual utility that's being provided through this mobile application, and it's also providing an additional level of engagement between the customer and that specific brand.
I have one last question, then we can open up if anybody else has any questions. But just on the very immediate basis, what would you provide any advice for, or any recommendations for anybody here that they could do with mobile to talk to shoppers in the fourth quarter, which is a very, very hot area of timing of the year, and a lot of people are buying stuff? What kind of recommendations would you give them right now?
I'll jump in. So we at Google just recently looked at some historical data around the holiday periods in terms of what people search for. And so this is a little bit specific to search, but I think it, again, is a great way to get a sense of what people are asking for. And we found two things. One thing we found was, there's a big spike of mobile usage during Black Friday, okay? This is not surprising. People are, away from their desktop computer. They're out in the malls, shopping with their families, and they have their phone in their pocket. What we also found, which was more interesting, is the weekend. I think it's like December 19th or 20th. The week leading up into Christmas is a really high time for mobile. And so we realized the reason for this is it's right after the cutoff for online shipping. So for those last 7 days, you can't order online anymore and get it shipped to you in time. So you're more apt to go into stores. You're more apt to need to find those stores, and the way that you find those stores often is through your mobile phone. We recently released that there's more searches now on Google Maps through mobile than there are on desktop. So Maps being a prime way to get into that store, getting directions to the store, et cetera.
I think that hopefully your mobile strategy is holistic enough that all of your email marketing, and if you're doing text marketing, text messaging, or what have you, that there's a mobile component to that, right? But I think there are some interesting specific things you can do in mobile, push notifications, via apps. We're doing that with PacSun and ASOS. And I think those are effective, not in just getting the user to engage with the app, but also to get them in store. I think REI is doing some interesting things with QR codes. They put QR codes on the back of their mailer, but instead of launching their mobile site or their app, which is full commerce, it launches the location-aware proximity search, find a store nearby. So there's a use case for mobile that is not driving mobile ROI. In this case, it's using physical and mobile to drive in-store engagement, but of course, that's very, very important to REI.
I mean, just speaking from one kind of publisher's perspective, and something we do constantly, you touched on, is it's hard to come up with new apps and new campaigns for the rest of Q4, but take your existing channels and optimize them for mobile. So whether it's how your emails look on all the different devices, whether it's your landing pages for SEO, whether it's your SEM keywords, tweaked for mobile AdSense, it's the channels you're already in and the strategies you're already executing, making sure they're optimized for the platforms that all the smartphones that are going to get sold this quarter will start to consume.
I have one recommendation for Rich.
Great.
I'm so excited to hear that you have the ability to now scan the phone. And I think that it's an opportunity to run something specific, like a mobile-specific offer. If you're going to run an offer, run a separate mobile offer, something different than you're running anywhere else. And you'll be able to now, by scanning the barcodes, track exactly what an impact mobile had. And I think that's really exciting. So I'm glad you guys are.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
The coupons that we're doing holiday are going to be exclusive to mobile, and for that reason, because then, like you said, you can really track sales. I think that the biggest thing is that this is really, I think, where retail is truly a digital experience now, and you can even add whether you like it or not. I think get on board, because in the past there was always this sort of convoluted, justifications of how your website was going to help your retail stores, and you don't really have to do that anymore, right? Now it's still a challenge in measurement and point of sale and all that. You have to work through that, but I think we've pretty much solved it, right? Now we know, people see what they're using their phones for. We can track that. It's just a matter of keeping up with the pace of change, doing the right things in the right order, and that's the big challenge.
I think we have time for a question, right? Yep. Anybody have anything they want to ask up here?
I wanted to ask about the relationship among the various providers that are all or the various brands that are all trying to get that consumer close to home. Because I've interviewed so many different layers for articles over the last year between not only the retailer but of course the product manufacturer. All of these in between layer of the shop kicks, the checkouts. Then of course the local social networks like a Foursquare. There seem to be a lot of layers. Shopping malls now are into it. It seems to be a lot of different places the consumer has to figure out where to go when they want to get that local shopping information, or figure out what is that best deal, or figure out where's the product information I most need. I'm curious about the relationship among all those different players for a lot of you, and how you're relating to them right now, and what sorts of relationships you see in order to clarify the market for the consumer.
It's almost like saying simply who wins of all those
I'm
layers.
trying to avoid saying who owns the consumer.
Too late.
Because it's hackneyed at this point, and it may
So I'll
not
say
apply
it.
anymore.
Who owns the consumer?
I mean, I guess my answer to that would be, I think that, from the retail perspective, we're pretty agnostic about how we get the traffic. If it's profitable and it's the right partnership, that's great. And it's going to require many, many partnerships and many different approaches. And it's not unlike, when affiliate marketing really took off, and they're like, well, why are you paying this website to drive a sale to your website, and you've got this huge network? And the answer is because, you're getting the incremental sales outweigh the cannibalism, that takes place, and that's the same is true in retail now. Now we have all these new ways to go test and try and experiment, and we announced recently our partnership with Google on Google Wallet in New York, and excited about that, and to see people using that service. So, any way we can get them to Walgreens is good for me.
I would say the brand with the most usable experience will win, right? I mean, the first thing people do when they get their new device is they go look for an experience that's been optimized for that device. And of course, the App Store is a great place to go because you know that it's going to be made for that device. But I think more and more mobile web, tablet web, these are experiences that customers are expecting to be optimized. A personal anecdote, I watch CNN, but I now watch ABC News on my iPad because they have a tablet-optimized experience. They recognize me as an iPad user. I toggle to that view, and it's a superior experience. So I think the challenge is going to be, optimizing for all of these devices, because it is a reflection of your brand and your content.
I agree with Philip about, I absolutely agree that the best experience wins. The C is large, right? I mean, we're talking about, 5x growth in the past 2 years. I don't think there needs to be one winner. I think that, and I don't think the consumer doesn't think about these brands and these third-party apps and what's Google and what's, Apple or, iAd. They don't think about it in that way. The consumer thinks, I want to find this, and, where am I going to find it in the easiest way? And if we think more about, again, answering those questions and less about, who wins, I think that everyone will win.
Everybody wins if we get to eat lunch.
Thank you. Thanks, Cory. Thank you, panel.
Thank you to the panel. Give them a round of applause.
We have quite a lineup this afternoon. So eat hearty, but stay awake, because we're going to be talking, when we come back from lunch, we're going to be talking tablets and whether brands need to be there. We'll be talking about, can mobile elude the great banner invisibility problem? We'll have our great RFP bake-off session with Quaker Oats, and then we're going to end the day talking about second screening, a topic that's come up throughout the day. We're going to break for lunch, go out and grab lunch quickly, and come back in because we have 2 presentations from Marchex and from Google on mobile advertising. If you'll go out this door, you'll get fastest online, and then come in the far door and resume your seat, and we'll start the Lunch and Learn presentations in 10 minutes.